To order. I'll note for the record that all members of council are present and accounted for, except for Councilman Will, who will not be joining us this evening. He's out of town. As always, we begin with a Pledge of Allegiance. So if you're able, please stand and join us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First item up. Well, before we get started, I will mention for anyone that had not heard the update, there will be no public hearing on the Alcovey condominiums. That application was withdrawn by the applicant, and the item will not be heard by the applicant and will not be heard by the City Council. The item will not be heard or discussed during this evening's meetings. So with that done, we'll go ahead and begin with the agenda. And the consent agenda is the first item, which includes three different items on the consent agenda tonight. That's the council meeting minutes from the meeting of January 18th, 2022, alcoholic beverage license application, PH-21-AB-39, SHFT NP Inc., DBA Food Terminal, 6360 North Point Parkway, Alpharetta, Georgia, 30022. And the third item would be the financial management report for the month ending December 31st, 2021. Is there anyone that would like to remove anything from the consent agenda this evening? Seeing none, I'll call for a motion.
Motion to approve, Mr. Mayor. Second.
Have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Merkel, second by Councilman Hypes to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote no. And it does pass unanimously. So we'll move on to boards and commissions appointments. This evening, we have several of those. We'll begin with the Code Enforcement Board, the appointee of Roger Bauer. Is there any discussion on the item? All those in favor of the appointment of Roger Bauer to the Code Enforcement Board, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote no. And it does pass unanimously. Second appointment will be for the Cultural Arts Commission, and this is Miss Alicia Burr. Any discussion? All those in favor of the appointment of Alicia Burr to the Cultural Arts Commission, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote accordingly.
We're going to do this again.
And it does pass unanimously. There's also an appointee, Melody Cookson. There is no vote needed on this item, but she'll be joining the Cultural Arts Commission. That appointment made by Councilman Will. And I'll also announce that Ben Manley will be reappointed to the Natural Resources Commission. This was also an appointee from Councilman Will. No vote will be needed on that item. So that'll wrap up the boards and commissions appointments. We have a public hearing item that was withdrawn. So we'll move on to new business for this evening. And the first item of new business will be the approval of fiscal year 2022 mid-year budget amendment. Director Harris, you have the floor. This is the first reading. There will be an ordinance. So please stand at the ready, Mr. Stacey.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is the first reading of the fiscal year 2022 mid-year budget amendment. Many of these items were approved during the year, and we also got into detail at the retreat as far as all these new initiatives specifically. Also, this is the second amendment to the budget because we did one in November related to the property tax revenue. We that up 1.3 million or so, and we covered the personnel cost for the public safety and the rest of the employees for the raises. But this item before you again, we spoke pretty detailed at the retreat. There's $835,000 of revenues being recognized here to cover the initiatives that are in the general fund, about $835,000, and that's primarily funded from the local option sales tax. The only item that wasn't specifically at the retreat is was the reclassification of a court solicitor from a contractor to an employee, and then a relationship with Milton picking up 40% of that cost.
Thanks, sir.
Any questions?
Do we have any questions from council on the mid-year budget item? Ms. Stacy, if you don't mind, please read the ordinance.
An ordinance of the mayor and council of the city of Alpharetta, Georgia, to adopt a mid-year fiscal 2022 budget for certain funds of the city of Alpharetta, Georgia, appropriating the amounts shown in each budget as expenditures, adopting the item of revenue anticipation, prohibiting expenditures to exceed appropriations, and prohibiting expenditures to exceed actual funding available.
Thanks, sir. Mr.
No one
Jenkins.
has signed up, sir.
But if we do have anyone that would like to come forward and speak on this item, now's your opportunity. Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Yes, sir. I move that we approve the fiscal year 2022 mid-year budget amendment as presented by Tom Harris.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilman Binder and a second by Councilman Dorito to approve the fiscal year 2022 mid-year budget amendment as read by City Attorney Mike Stacy. Any discussion? All those in favor, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote accordingly. And it does pass unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Harris. Ms. Cook, I believe you have this item this evening. Next item up under new business will be the South Main Street LCI Supplemental Study Contract Award.
Thank you, Mayor. This next item, just a reminder, the South Main Street LCI Supplemental Study. We were awarded $160,000 from the Atlanta Regional Commission. The city committed a 20% match, so this program is a total of $200,000, and the area is shown to you on the screen. That's a little bit better. The goal of the South Main Street LCI Supplemental Study, of course, is to develop a plan to improve the South Main Street area, the roadway for pedestrians, bicycle transportation elements, and of course the public space activation, as well as economic development opportunities. So there's several parts to this study. The city issued the South Main Street RFP on September 16th, and proposals were due in October. We did have 3 consultant teams that responded. All 3 were shortlisted, and then we went through the interview process. Staff had originally recommended the top scoring consultant team to be awarded the contract. However, when we went back going through the contract, we couldn't agree on the contract terms. So we are recommending that the award go to Kimley Horn, who was the consultant team with the second highest scoring. And I will say the second highest scoring, but they also had included a lot of those elements that the highest scoring had said would be an extra price. So we are recommending that Kimley Horn be awarded the South Main Street Creative Placemaking Project. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to try to answer those.
Do we have any questions from council on this item? Is there anything Mr. Bosman wanted to add since he made the trip?
He talks a lot, so he may want to, I don't know.
He's shaking his head. He didn't even say no. All right. Mr. Drinker, do we have any public comment cards on this item?
We do not, sir.
But if anyone would like to come forward and speak on this item for the award of the contract for the South Main Street LCI, now's your chance. Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. I'd offer a motion tonight to approve the South Main Street LCI Supplement Study contracted to Kimley Horn as presented tonight by Director Kathy Cook.
Do I have a second?
Second, Mayor.
We have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Merkel and a second by Councilman Dorito. Any discussion on the award of the South Main Street LCI contract? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, please vote yes, otherwise vote no. And it does pass unanimously. That'll bring us to the third and final new business item, and that is the adoption of bond resolution and award of bonds. Director Harris.
I think so.
Just point of question here, Mr. Stacy. Do we have to read this entire resolution?
I regret to inform you that we do.
Thank you for the clarity.
Therefore, I'll be longer in my presentation. Just kidding. On November 2nd, the voters of Alpharetta voted in favor of a Series 2022 bond, general obligation bonds, not to exceed $29.5 million for the purpose of funding certain park projects. Today, our advisors, PFM, Public Financial Management, financial advisors, and us, we sold bonds competitively on an online bidding site. We received 14 bids, which is quite a bit, number of bids. Morgan Stanley was the lowest, offered the lowest true interest cost. That's the cost of the interest rate really on the bonds together with their underwriting fee for taking the bonds. So that is tonight's resolution is going to approve the bid and award to Morgan Stanley. The bonds, are sized at a par amount of $27.3 million. That money, together with the fact that there were some premium bonds, meaning that the interest rates on the bonds, the market sometimes wants an interest rate, a coupon rate greater than the actual rate they would get in the market now, but they want to see that coupon every month. Well, they're going to pay a premium for those bonds. So if the bond was $5,000, for example, and somebody was buying a $5,000 bond with a 5% coupon, but the real interest rate is only 2.29%, they're going to pay $5,200 for that, or some number above that. Those numbers, premium dollars, together with the $27 million par, pays for the cost of issuance and drops $29.5 million in a project fund to fund the projects, which were $29.5 million. The bond closing is set for February 23rd. If there's any questions.
Any questions from council? Seeing none, Mr. Stacy, please begin.
A resolution providing for, one, the approval of the sale of $27,335,000 in principal amount of City of Alpharetta, Georgia, general obligation bonds, Series 2022. Two, the approval of the form of such bonds. Three, the preparation of a tax digest and the levy of a tax to pay the principal and interest of the bonds. Four, the naming of an authenticating agent, bond registrar, paying agent, and construction fund custodian. 5, the authorization of the execution and delivery of an official statement and continuing disclosure agreement relating to such bonds. 6, and for such other purposes. Whereas the Council of the City of Alpharetta, Georgia, the City Council has determined that it is in the best interest of the citizens of the City of Alpharetta, Georgia, the City, that there be provided funds to finance A, the additional development of the Alpha Loop, B, the Farmhouse Park design and build out, C, the Mid-Broadwell Park build out, D, the Old Rucker Park design and build out, E, the Turf Wedge Bridge Web Bridge large soccer field, F, for the Union Hill Park redevelopment / trailhead, G, the Waters Road Park design and build out, H, the Wills Park equestrian renovation build out, and I, the Wills Park master plan projects, collectively the projects. And whereas an election was duly called and held in the city on November 2, 2021, the election and a majority of the registered voters of such city voting in such election voted in favor of issuance of City of Alpharetta, Georgia, general obligation bonds, Series 2022, the bonds in the aggregate principal amount of up to $29,500,000 for the purpose of funding the projects and paying the cost of issuance related thereto. And whereas the election authorized the bonds to be issued in the aggregate principal amount of up to $29,500,000 and the proceeds from the sale of the bonds to be applied for the purpose of financing financing, 1, the projects, and 2, the costs associated with the issuance of the bonds. And whereas the bonds are to be sold by the city to the successful bidder as defined herein pursuant to the terms of an official notice of sale, the notice of sale, and whereas the city has received and accepted the offer of the successful bidder to purchase the bonds in the principal amount of $27,335,000 at the prices reflected on Exhibit A attached hereto, and whereas it is necessary in order to issue and deliver the bonds to approve the form of the bonds, to authorize the execution and delivery of the bonds, and to levy an annual tax if necessary on the taxable property within the limits of the city to pay the principal of and interest on the bonds as the same becomes due, and whereas the city proposes to designate authenticating agent, bond registrar, paying agent, and construction fund custodian with respect to the bonds, and whereas it is necessary to authorize the execution of a continuing disclosure agreement, the continuing disclosure agreement relating to the bonds, where it is necessary to ratify the preparation, use, and distribution of a preliminary official statement dated January 31, 2022, as supplemented on February 4, 2022, and authorize the preparation and execution and delivery of a final official statement dated February 7, 2022, relating to the bonds. Now therefore be it resolved by the City of Alpharetta, Georgia, acting by and through the Mayor and City Council, and it is hereby resolved by the authority aforesaid as follows. Section 1, authorization of the bonds, terms, payment, use of proceeds. The issuance of $27,335,000 in aggregate principal amount of City of Alpharetta, Georgia, general obligation bonds series 2022 is hereby authorized. The bond shall mature on May 1 of the year and bear interest payable on May 1 and November 1 of each year, commencing November 1, 2022 at the annual interest rates and in the amounts as set forth in Exhibit A attached hereto. The bond shall be subject to redemption prior to maturity and have such other terms as provided for in the form of the bonds herein authorized. Section 2, designation of paying agent, bond registrar, and authentication agent, authorization of paying agency agreement. The Bank of New York Mellon Trust Company, N.A. in Jacksonville, Florida, is hereby designated to act as authenticating agent, bond registrar, and paying agent with respect to the bonds. The execution, delivery, and performance of paying agent agency agreement dated as of February 1, 2022, between the city and the Bank of New York Mellon Trust Company, N.A., Jacksonville, Florida, in substantially the form attached hereto as Exhibit B, are hereby approved and authorized. Such custodial agreement shall be in substantially the form approved by the mayor and council, and the execution of such certification by the mayor is hereby authorized shall constitute conclusive evidence of such approval. Section 3, execution of bonds by the city. The bonds shall be executed for and on behalf of the city by the manual or duly authorized reproduced facsimile signatures of the mayor of the city, and the corporate seal of the city shall be imprinted thereon and attested by the manual or duly authorized reproduced facsimile signature of the clerk of the city. In case any officer whose signature shall be affixed to the bonds or who shall have sealed any of the bonds shall cease to be such officer before the bonds so signed and sealed shall have been actually delivered, the bonds nevertheless shall be valid bonds of the city and may be delivered as such, notwithstanding the fact that such officer or officers may have ceased to be such officer or officers of the city when the bond shall be actually delivered. Section 4, bond form. The bonds, the certificate of validation, and provision for registration shall be in substantially the form attached hereto as Exhibit C. Section 5, delivery of bonds. There shall be delivered to the successful bidder as detailed in Section 19 hereof of such other location as the parties may agree at the earliest possible date, properly executed bonds in an aggregate principal amount of $27,335,000 in the denominations numbered, maturing, and bearing interest as herein above set forth. Upon receipt of the purchase price for the bonds, the mayor of the city or his designee is authorized to physically deliver the bonds to the successful bidder, and the mayor of the city or his designee is authorized to execute for on behalf of the city such receipt for proceeds of the bonds and such other closing certificates and proofs as may be necessary and proper. Section 6, authentication of bonds. Only such bonds as shall have endorsed thereon a certificate of authentication substantially in the form herein above set forth duly executed by the bond registrar shall be deemed to be validly issued hereunder. No bond shall be valid or obligatory for any purpose unless and until such certificate of authentication shall have been executed by the bond registrar, and such executed certificate of the bond registrar upon any such bond shall be conclusive evidence that such bond has been authenticated and delivered hereunder. Said certificate of authentication on any bond shall be deemed to have been executed by the bond registrar, but it shall not be necessary that the same authorized signatory sign the certificate of authentication on all of the bonds. Section 7, medium and places of payment. The principal of and interest on the bonds shall be payable in any coin or currency of the United States of America, which at the time of payment is legal tender for the payment of public and private debts. The principal and interest on the bonds shall be payable as provided in the form of bond approved in this resolution. All bonds may have endorsed thereon such legends, text, or identification numbers as may be necessary or appropriate to conform to any applicable rules and regulations of any government authority or any securities exchange on which the bonds may be listed or any usage or requirement of law with respect thereto. Section 8, registration of transfer and exchange of bonds. The bond registrar shall cause books for the registration of transfer for the bonds to be kept in accordance with the provisions described in Exhibit D attached hereto. Section 9, registered owner. The person in whose name any bond shall be registered shall be deemed and regarded as the absolute owner owner thereof for all purposes, and payment of or on account of either principal or interest shall be made only to or upon to the order of the registered owner thereof or his duly authorized attorney, but such registration may be changed as here and above provided. All such payments shall be valid and effectual to satisfy and discharge the liability upon such bond to the extent of the sum or sum so paid. Section 10, continuing request. The inclusion of the foregoing provisions shall constitute 1, a continuing request from the city to the clerk of the Superior Court of Fulton County, unless his or her signature shall occur by facsimile to execute the certificate of validation on any replacement bonds issued pursuant hereto, and 2, the appointment of the bond registrar as agent for the city to do any and all things necessary to effect any replacement, exchange, or registration of transfer. Section 11, mutilated or destroyed bonds. In case any bond shall become mutilated or be destroyed or lost, the city may cause to be executed, authenticated, and delivered a new bond of like date and tenor in exchange or substitution for any such bond upon, in the case of mutilated bonds, surrender of such bonds, or in the case of destroyed or lost bonds, the owners filing with the city, the paying agent, and the bond registrar evidence satisfactory to them that such bond was destroyed or lost, and providing indemnity satisfactory to them. If any such bond shall have matured, instead of issuing a new bond, the city may pay the same. Section 12, Global Forms Securities Depository Ownership of Bonds. Upon the initial issuance, the ownership of each bond shall be registered in the name of the Securities Depository or the Securities Depository nominee, and ownership thereof shall be maintained in book entry form by the Securities Depository for the account of the agent members thereof as described in Exhibit E hereto. Section 13, creation of construction fund. There is hereby authorized and directed to be created a special fund, trust fund designated City of Alpharetta, Georgia Construction Fund Series 2022. The construction fund with the Bank of New York Mellon Trust Company, N.A., Jacksonville, Florida, in such capacity the construction fund custodian, into which the net proceeds received from the sale of the bonds shall be deposited, $27,335,000 par amount plus net original issue premium of $2,539,405.20, unless a purchaser's discount of $48,340.28. Such amounts shall be withdrawn and invested only in accordance with the provisions and restrictions set forth in the form of custodial agreement authorized below. Section 14, authorization of custodial agreement. The execution, delivery, and performance of a custodial agreement dated as of February 1, 2022 between the city and the Bank of New York Mellon Trust Company, N.A., Jacksonville, Florida, in substantially the form attached hereto as Exhibit F, are hereby authorized and approved. Such custodial agreement shall be in substantially the form approved by the mayor and the council, and the execution of such certification by the mayor is hereby authorized shall constitute conclusive evidence of such approval. Section 15, tax covenants and representations. The bonds are being issued by the city in compliance with the conditions necessary for the interest income on the bonds to be exempt from federal income taxation pursuant to the provisions of Section 103A of the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 as amended the code relating to the obligations of the state or political subdivisions thereof. The city hereby covenants with the holders of the bonds as described in Exhibit G attached hereto. Section 16, preparation of tax digest. The city administrator and director of finance are hereby directed to ascertain from the tax returns of the city and from the tax returns made to the Commissioner of Revenue of the state of Georgia the total value of all the property in the city subject to taxation for general obligation bond purposes, and to prepare a digest of all such property in a book furnished by the mayor and council and kept for that purpose. Section 17, tax levy. The city hereby levies an annual tax upon all property of the city subject to taxation for general obligation bond purposes at such rate as will raise the amount in each year necessary to pay principal and interest on the bonds as the same becomes due and payable. As more fully described on Exhibit H attached here too, and the city administrator be and is hereby directed to certify the same to the city and commissioner of the revenue of the state of Georgia. The said several sums shall be collected by the city administrator together with any other monies collected for this purpose in each of said years, and shall be annually paid into a sinking fund to be maintained by the city for and applied exclusively to the payment of the principal of and interest on the bonds as the same become due and payable, and provisions to meet the requirements of this section shall be made annually thereafter. The sinking fund shall be held and kept separate and apart from all the revenues collected by the city. Section 18, authorization of official statement deemed final and continuing disclosure agreement. The use and distribution of the preliminary official statement dated January 31, 2022 as supplemented on February 4, 2022 pertaining to the bonds are hereby ratified and approved. The execution, use, and distribution of the official statement dated February 7, 2022 pertaining to the bonds are authorized and approved provided that the official statement is in substantially the same form as the preliminary official statement presented at this meeting and filed with the clerk of the city. The execution and delivery of the 15C C2-12 certificate required by the rule are hereby ratified and approved. The execution, delivery, and performance of the continuing disclosure agreement in substantially the form attached as an appendix to the preliminary official statement are hereby authorized and approved. The city hereby covenants for the benefit of the owners of the bonds and the successful bidder to comply with its obligation under the continuing disclosure agreement. Notwithstanding any other provision of this resolution, failure of the city to comply with the continuing disclosure agreement shall not be considered a default hereunder. It is expressly provided, however, that any beneficial owner of the bonds may take such action to the extent and in such manner as may be allowed by applicable law as may be necessary and appropriate, including seeking mandamus or specific performance by court order to cause the city to comply with its obligations under this Section 18. The cost to the city of performing its obligations set forth in this Section 18 shall be paid solely from funds lawfully available for such purpose. Section 19, official notice of sale, acceptance of bid. The actions of the staff of the city in drafting and circulating an official notice of sale, the notice of sale, and reviewing bids for the purchase of the bonds submitted pursuant to this notice of sale are hereby authorized and approved. The bond shall be sold to Morgan Stanley and Company, LLC, the bidder submitting the lowest true interest cost for the bond issue, which conforms to the specifications set forth in the notice of sale, the successful bidder. And the administrative, finance, and legal staffs of the city are hereby directed to take all actions necessary to accomplish the delivery of the bonds to the successful bidder pursuant to the terms hereof. Section 20, non-arbitrage certification. The mayor and clerk of the city are hereby authorized to execute and deliver on behalf of the city a non-arbitrage certificate in order to comply with sections 103B2 and 148 of the code and the applicable treasury regulations thereunder. And setting forth therein such expectations and covenants on the part of the city as may be necessary or appropriate to preserve the exclusion of the interest of the bonds from gross income for federal income tax purposes. Such certification shall be in substantially the form approved by the mayor and council, and the execution of such certification by the mayor is hereby authorized shall constitute conclusive evidence of such approval. Section 21, general authorizations. From and after the adoption of this resolution, the proper officers, agents, and employees of the city are hereby authorized, empowered, and directed to do all such acts and things and to execute and deliver all such documents, instruments, certificates, and reports as may be necessary or desirable in connection with the issuance and sale of the bonds, and to carry out and comply with the provisions of this resolution, and are further authorized to take any and all further actions and execute any and all other documents, instruments, reports, and certificates as may be necessary or desirable in connection with the issuance and sale of the bonds and the execution and delivery of the official statement and continuing disclosure agreement, and to document compliance with the provision of all applicable laws. Section 22, confirmation of actions, all acts and doings of the officers of the city which are in conformity with the purposes and intents of this resolution and in furtherance of the issuance of the bonds and the execution, delivery, and performance of the official statement and the issuance and sale of the bonds shall be, and the same hereby are, in all respects approved and confirmed. Section 23, waiver of audit. The waiver of the performance audit or performance review by the city with respect to the bonds as such terms are described in Section 3682-100 Official Code of Georgia annotated is hereby approved and authorized. Section 24, approval of actions of mayor and council. All actions taken by the mayor and council relating to the authorization and issuance of the bonds be and the same are hereby ratified, approved, and confirmed. And all resolutions or proceedings or parts of resolutions or proceedings in conflict with this resolution be and the same are hereby repealed. The mayor is hereby authorized to do any and all things, including but not limited to making covenants on behalf of the city, proceeding with the validation of the bonds in Superior Court of Fulton County, and executing any and all documents, including but not limited to a non-arbitrage certificate necessary to issue the bonds, to refund prior bonds, and to carry out the transaction contemplated by this resolution. Section 25, payments due on Saturday, Sunday, or holiday. If a payment on the bonds is due on a Saturday, Sunday, or any day that the designated corporate trust office of the paying agent is authorized or required by law to remain closed, such payment shall be made on the next succeeding business day with the same force and effect as if the payment had made on the original due date. Section 26, repeal of conflicting resolutions. All resolutions or proceedings or parts of resolutions or proceedings of the city in conflict with the provisions of this resolution shall be the same hereby are repealed. Section 27, effective date. This resolution shall be effective immediately upon its adoption.
Well done. I was reading along on my document here, and I had 25 or 18 more pages, so I'm glad we were only going through 7 of them.
Those were the ones that we needed to read.
Thank you, sir. I do appreciate that. So, and I'm sorry I didn't take time to explain before, but state law requires when the city issues a bond to pass a resolution for the issuance of that bond, and it also requires the public reading of that. So since it's not our money, it's your money that we're dealing with, we have to read the entire document to make sure everybody knows what's going on there. Thank you, Mr. Stacy. That being said, does anyone have any questions about the resolution of the document? Mr. Binder, do we have any public comment cards on this item?
No, we do not. You said Mr.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was looking at Mr. Binder and looking at Mr.
He is correct, sir. There are no public.
Mr. Drinker. Do we have any public comment cards?
No, sir, we do not.
But if there's anyone here that would like to come forward and speak on these bond issuance, now's your chance. Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Yes, sir. I move that we,
Councilman Binder.
yes, sir. I move that we please approve the resolution approving the sale of the General Obligation Bonds Series 2022 and award the bonds.
I'd second that.
We have a motion by Councilman Binder, a second by Councilman Mitchell. Any discussion? Councilman Mitchell.
Tom, thank you for all your work and surveying this with all the different outlets that were available. I think this is a historically low rate. And I also want to thank Ben Burnett, Karen Richard, Jason Binder for having the vision and foresight to agree with 75% of our citizens on getting these parks done. I think it's pretty substantial, and so I couldn't be more pleased tonight with how we're moving the city forward with the parks. Thank you.
Mr. Stacy, this is more of a housekeeping item. I received 4 of these documents to sign and then 4 signing pages, but I don't typically sign documents that aren't attached to the signing page, so.
I anticipated that question. I spoke with bond counsel. We need 4 copies of the document. The other pages that are not attached are actually the same signature pages as go with the documents, but are going to be placed in various digests of the document, and it's a requirement that they've got.
As long as the attorney tells me I'm supposed to sign these without the documents, I will sign them.
Yes,
That's
sir.
why I wanted to get it on the record here. So, thank you.
Advice of counsel.
All those in favor of the motion to approve the issuance of the bond as the resolution read by City Attorney Mr. Stacy, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote no. And it does pass unanimously. Thank you, everyone. That will wrap up the new business portion of tonight's meeting, and we'll move on to the workshop. First item under workshop is the Cumming Street Future Improvements. Director Sisevich, you have the floor.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Cumming Street corridor was part of the T-Splosh 2 referendum under our Tier 1. And what was discussed in the T-Splosh was installing 4-foot beauty strip, 8-foot wide sidewalks, street lights in the 4-foot beauty strip area. That cost comes into right around, off of today's projections, around $10 to $12 million for the whole corridor. So it was discussed at the retreat to, we'll call it connect the gaps. And there's approximately 2,700 linear feet of sidewalk missing in that area. Staff presented some attachments in the packet. They're a little smaller reads, I won't put up on the projector. But that cost comes in substantially less. We're thinking right around the $4 million to $4.5 million amount, given projecting what construction costs are going to be in the future. When we saw that, we actually saw a other idea potentially, and the connecting the gaps was a 2-foot beauty strip and 8-foot wide sidewalk. We think there's a way to balance it a little bit more, and that is a 4-foot beauty strip with an 8-foot wide sidewalk. So that's what East of Main is doing. So we'd be tying in East of Main. If there's any future development along that corridor, they would be following the same typical section that has been approved through community development for the redevelopments of that area. So we do have some tight right-of-way, about the first 5 parcels east of Cricket Lane. The sidewalk, the 8-foot sidewalk on a 2-foot beauty strip would be right dead smack in the middle. That's where the right-of-way would be. If we go a 4-foot beauty strip, the right-of-way, the whole entire sidewalk would need to get right-of-way. So that's for a small section. The next section going out to the creek, it's about 50-50. It's slivers of property. It's not, we're talking 20 or 30 feet. It's probably about 8 foot of right-of-way and then another about 5 to 10 feet of construction easement to construct the sidewalk. So we believe that number is still in the similar ballpark. The retaining walls will be a little taller. Might be approaching closer to the $5 million amount, counting the street lights in the area as well. Street lights go for about $20,000 per light fixture. That counts the wire, that counts the footing, that counts the installation, as well as the purchase of the light. So Public Works' recommendation is to, we'll call it split the baby in half. Instead of going for the whole corridor improvements, designing the whole corridor, and just a 2-foot beauty strip, going for a 4-foot beauty strip and an 8-foot wide sidewalk, and proceed with the design of that for the 2,700 linear feet that is missing.
And just for the public's sake, this is a workshop, so it's an opportunity for us to discuss. There'll be no vote taken this evening, but you will have an opportunity to speak if you're here to do so. Councilman Hypes.
Thank you, Pete. I appreciate the time and effort you've been putting into trying to bring this home. We have a couple of 2 or 3 graphics in our packet. Do you have those available to you? So as you were discussing some of these improvements, I thought I was following you, but then I was unsure. And one of my questions as you're doing that is the recommendation that you have brought forward. Is that sidewalks north and south, or just north?
It's sidewalks just where there are no sidewalks today. So it's going to be predominantly on the south side.
Pardon me?
Predominantly on the south side.
When the project is completed and adding 2,700 linear feet, would that result with sidewalks on both sides of Cumming Street?
Correct.
And that's within the 4.75 million?
Correct.
Okay.
Now, do you know what page, which one you want to look at, what exhibit?
Well, by asking you these questions, that helps a little bit, but I'm looking at the third one in.
Is it the one that says gaps at the top, or is it the one that says full corridor at the top?
It's sheet 3 of 7.
They're
But another question is, did you reference any bridges that would need to be addressed for purposes of pedestrian walkways?
So right now, there is an existing sidewalk right here on the north side.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the south side, we do not have any crossing at all right now.
That's over the creek, correct?
Yes.
And can sidewalks be added to those bridges without replacing the bridges?
Well, they're actually culverts in that area, so a little different terminology. They basically a large pipe underneath the road.
Yes, I was using bridge loosely as a structure that goes over something that has water in it, but yes, culverts, yes.
So it's, but the culvert, yeah, we'll have to do some engineering to make sure that we're not increasing any of the flow downstream or the floodplain compensation. So there's some engineering involved, some hydrology analysis before I could fully 100% answer that question.
And with respect to water runoff, is there anything environmental that has to be done on this, or can we just proceed with whatever we need to do?
That's one area that we have to look at. We know that there is a sensitive area over here with the creek. We've had some challenges in that area with drainage. So right now, there's no curb and gutter from Cricket Lane to the creek. So everything is surface flow, everything drains through swales, it infiltrates into the ground. So that's one reason why we are recommending the 4-foot beauty strip compared to the 2, that we could put some more permeable soil in and capture some of that runoff before it makes its way to the creek, infiltrating the ground faster instead of discharging directly into a pipe into the creek. So we need to catch the runoff because now it's being caught in the grass strips.
Well, I take to heart what Councilman Binder has brought up on some occasions, which is, design dollars versus actually getting something that you can, use. But I understand that design dollars are important. So in what you are proposing to accomplish a project A to Z within that T-SPLOST allotment, how much of that is design and how much of that is construction?
I would say 95% is going to be construction, 90% is going to be construction. The one area where we need the design dollars is the work over the creek. We have a very talented staff over in Public Works, and they've designed the majority of the corridor exhibits you see here. They did the majority of all the sidewalk projects on the last bond referendum, designed it in-house, so we can tap into our talented individuals, engineers, landscape architects to help us move this forward. It may not be as quickly as hiring a consultant, but we'll save some significant dollars.
And another question I had was, assuming everything goes according to plan and this proceeds forward, what's your timeline look like in terms of doing this work? How would the lanes of travel be impacted?
Okay, so everything, the schedule for the design is all hindered on the creek crossing on the south side. So do we have to get a permit from the state? Do we stay out of the buffers? Do we need a variance? How does that work? How does that timing play off and take that with the construction cost? Do we go after a permit that could take a year to get and that will lower our construction cost, or do we go after a different methodology and increase construction cost? So we want to stay within that $4.75 million budget that we have. So once we know what hydrology-wise we got to deal with the bridge, I could give you more definite, but it's probably going to be at least 2 years.
Would lanes of vehicle travel be impacted by this project?
Yes, sir.
Well, I would, as a workshop item, I would be curious to know about the timing of when that happens, given that we may have some other traffic disruptions with DOT projects, et cetera.
And we could work that accordingly into the schedule as we get closer to.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Dorito?
Thank you, Mayor. Pete, just for follow-up on Councilman Hype's earlier comments or question regarding the sidewalks on both the south and the north side. I think his question was, were there going to be sidewalks on both sides? And I think, for clarification purposes, when we say sidewalks on both sides, on the north sides, you're referring to the existing sidewalk, correct?
Correct.
That's not part of the new project of the 8 feet with the 4-foot beauty strip and all that stuff, right?
That's not part of our recommendation.
I just wanted to clarify that, John. I don't know.
Councilman Mitchell?
Thank you, Pete, for looking into all this. I know when you and I have spoken about it before, it was, part of the safety concern down on the east side, mainly on the east side of Cummings Street, that really is not well connected, yet we have a ton of pedestrians walking there. We have folks crossing to go to the temple and stuff like that. And I know I asked you about it, but just for the public's sake, is there any way under this budget, without spending, a lot of the dollars for street lamps and things like that, can we get some ambient post lighting at those intersections? Because it's awfully dark right now.
I believe you're referring to.
Near Henderson Village and the Hindu temple across from the school, yes.
That's the mid-block crosswalk location that's part of the T-Splosh 2 project list that will be going out to bid here in the next couple of weeks.
Right.
So we'll look at some power poles to figure out if we got some power poles that we could add some street lights to improve the lighting out there. We will have rapid flashing beacons at that crosswalk, so when they push the button, it'll be lit up very well, but we'll look see what we have to do for some additional street lighting. And
Okay.
we can easily look into that.
All right, and there's other dark spots that you see people walking with your headlights at night, and they walk a lot in the afternoon. It's just a part of it. But it's hard to see them on the sidewalk right now without any kind of lighting, even if it were just ambient light.
Yeah. We walked the corridor, the team did the other day. They counted, there's a few, I want to say about 4 power poles that do not have any lights on them at all. Mm-hmm. Majority of the power poles are on the north side of the street, and they do, they're twofold. They have the mongoose arm, so they light more of the road than they do the sidewalk, instead of it being tilted down and picking up the sidewalk and the road a little bit. So we'll look and see what some of those can be replaced, see if they got LED fixtures in them as well with Georgia Power. But we could add additional street lights if necessary. That's not a big expense at all.
Yeah. We always knew this project would be a long-term kind of thing based on budgeting, but if we could get some safety features in there, I think it would be helpful.
And then we'll include, we know that connectivity is the key. We will have the lighting as part of the design. The pedestrian lighting will be in the 4-foot beauty strip area, and depending on where the cost comes in for those, depending if it's just the infrastructure going in or if council has other direction, but those add up pretty fast.
And one other question. The bridge that we took down on Windward Parkway, because we couldn't use it for the new greenway. Is there any possibility that could be used on this?
Already been recycled.
Oh, okay. All right. I knew you were thinking about that.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from council? Pete, do you have enough direction from us?
Yes, sir. Yep.
James, I know we don't always do public comments during a workshop, but if there's anyone here that's interested in that corridor, I was going to give them the opportunity. Has anyone
Certainly, sir.
signed
No
up?
one signed up.
But if you'd like to come forward and speak on this item, the workshop for the Cumming Street corridor, now's your chance. If you would, please just give your name and address for the public record.
Joe Bernard, 145 Cumming Street. So it's going to be in my backyard, front yard, sorry. Couple of questions, and because of putting in the curb, right now, when we get heavy rains, the section between my house and Cold Creek gets flooded. I mean, like, flooded. So we have the storm drain what's the house next to me? I'm 145, so they're 165 Cumming Street.
Those addresses on here.
There's a storage drain right there, and it does not function the way that it should because
Okay.
it is, and so putting curbs on there will push more water onto the road when cars come down. So I don't know if that had been looked at, because with that curb, it's gonna create more issues.
100% honest, we have not gone into the engineering. This
Okay.
is just, this is what we call the pretty picture phase.
Okay.
Then we gotta get into the details
Okay.
and start figuring all that good stuff out.
And then as far as lighting is concerned, across the street on Way Hill, you put in the black poles lighting. Is that the lighting that you're gonna do all the way down Cumming Street, or are you just doing the power poles?
No, we call them the pedestrian fixtures. So the 12-foot tall poles have the
Yeah.
light top on top.
And that's what's gonna be all the way down?
That was gonna be down between Cricket Lane and the bridge, the
Okay.
creek.
Is it gonna be up both sides of the street or
No,
just one side?
side.
North side or south side? or
South
have
side.
it- Okay, because right now they're on the north side.
Yeah, so we're only doing, the only missing gap on the sidewalk on Cumming Street is the south side.
Okay, and that's where the new lighting's gonna
Yes.
go?
Yep.
Okay. That is all I had for now. You'll hear from me.
Okay.
If there's anyone else who would like to come forward and speak on this item, now's your opportunity. Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Thank you, Pete.
Thank you.
Next item up under workshop is the Taste of Alpharetta special event, Highway 9 road closure. Major Langren, you have the floor.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. Thank you for having us. This is a project that's near and dear to my heart. I was the incident command for the very first Taste of Alpharetta when we moved it over to the new area downtown, and I think it's a tribute to what we've done here that we want to bring everybody into that area, but it creates its own unique set of problems. And one of the things that I think was the intent behind this event was to get everybody in all of these areas down here. But what we see is currently under the current layout, we have a problem of all of the vehicle traffic going north and southbound on Highway 9 primarily, right through the middle of the event. And so it's created problems from a safety perspective.
Excuse me.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Is there any way we could show these diagrams?
Yeah, I have some of them, yes.
Sorry to interrupt you, Major. I just
No
want
problem, sir, no problem.
I'm looking at mine, and I thought, well,
This'll
those people out there can't see what I'm
Probably
looking at.
The easiest one to give everybody the biggest overview of what we're talking about.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. But the intent, I think, behind this is to get everybody visiting all of the new locations, the new stores, and let everybody see the crown jewel of the city down there. And so what happened is for a long time, we just never really asked the question about shutting Highway 9 down. But as we've continued to do events downtown, and we saw this a lot with the Wire and Wood Festival in the past year, the pedestrian traffic trying to go across Highway 9 creates a huge problem with traffic. You're familiar with the way the Hawk signal is set up there and the way people use it but don't necessarily understand how to use it. And there's a lot of issues. And whenever we have an event down there, it just creates nothing but constant bumper-to-bumper traffic. And so from our perspective, the primary concern is always going to be the safety of the people who are down there. And because of the frustration down there, people are, they're walking across, not at crosswalks and things like that. And so our recommendation would be to actually close down Highway 9 for that period. And luckily this year, the Department of Transportation is willing to entertain that idea. And what we think this benefits is it does a couple things for us in the sense that it allows us to put in hard road closures at Highway 9 and Old Milton Parkway, and then also State Road 9 at Academy Street, which allows us to stop all vehicle traffic in the center. And that opens up people's free, entrance and exit from the town green and all of the areas on the west side of Highway 9. They can cross easily over to the east side and get to where most of the booths have been set up traditionally in the past. But it's just a free flowing back and forth, and it allows us to not be concerned so much about vehicle traffic going through the heart of where people are trying to do a lot of their actual crossing activity. And that'll allow us to focus on other areas in terms of security. It also just sort of broadens the footprint for what we could possibly do in the future. What we saw with Wire and Wood this year is it exceeded expectations in terms of attendance. So people are really, there's a lot of pent-up demand for and the entertainment that we provide in the city, and we're seeing more of that. We anticipate, because the taste is coming back, that there's going to be a lot of pent-up demand for that, and we anticipate a higher volume than we've seen in the past. And as you know, we have a high volume of people already. And so the goal here and the benefit of this is that, since we've connected West Side Parkway, it gives us another artery. It gives us a place to send the traffic that's not too inconvenient for most people, but allows us to keep the safety in mind. And we'd just like to see how it works this year and see if it's a good strategy and if we can sustain it moving forward.
Thank you, sir. Mayor Pro Tem Merkel.
Yeah, Trent, what's going to stop people from using Haynes Bridge and cutting that sucker off right there?
So there's a couple of other more detailed maps in terms of how we have it, in terms of how we have you can switch. Thank you, Maureen. You can see how we have some of the closures on the west side set up, but there will be more hard closures that way, but it's redirecting the traffic around the city center area. So there will still be access to Haynes Bridge, but it will be directed through there as opposed to just freely accessing. And Academy Street's still going to be allowed to flow. At least that's under the current proposal. And so we don't know what that additional load is going to do. It's a little bit of a test in that sense to see how it handles it. But the good thing about this situation and what the hard closure does is that while we're out there, we can make changes and we can get actual resources over there directing it on the fly, because we don't have to have people managing all of the traffic going along. So typically we would have to have people standing at the hawk signal, standing up at the crosswalk, sort of directing when people can get across. We can actually take those people and put them in other spots if we need to and move them to help alleviate any kind of traffic issues that we have.
It'll be interesting.
Agreed.
Councilman Hypes and then Councilman Binder.
Well, I like our starting point, which is safety of our citizens. When we invite people to a large event, I appreciate the fact that we're going to do what we can to keep them safe. So all these other questions are a little bit lower tier after we're talking about safety of people crossing Highway 9. But one of the questions is, what type of interaction have we had or will we have with businesses that would no longer have access to people to drive up to them? And I'll just give you an example. Alpharetta Outfitters. They're going to be inside the closed zone, really not part of the Taste of Alpharetta. They may benefit greatly from the crowds that are downtown, but any interaction with those businesses?
To that point, I'm not aware of any intentional outreach yet at this point, but I think that would be an excellent thing to do, is that if we decide to go ahead with this plan, is to go ahead and reach out to them and see what their concerns would be.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I know that when we do 5Ks, we try to reach out to any of the affected subdivisions, like Academy Park, when we close things down, and a little PR in advance. Yes, to. And then the next thing is, will we have people directing traffic to our parking garages? Because they're going to be a little harder to get to under this plan. Is it anticipated that we'll have some sort of directional way to direct people there?
Yeah, that's always a factor in terms of trying to help people get to places where they can park successfully, especially because of the location of this. And so there's a lot of unique parking challenges. And so there on the west side of the street, you can see that there's the way the blocks are set up. There's stations for officers to be at to answer questions along the way. When you see some of the soft road closures where you see like the police cars and things like that, those typically will help. We'll have signage up there like we always do in terms of directing people where parking is and things like that. But it's one of those things where we usually, as we're running that operation, it's almost you have to see what problems you're having before you can fully figure out exactly where resources need to be shifted. We're always very flexible in terms of how we attack that. Sometimes you anticipate a problem in one area and it just never shows up, and then you have one other in another area where you didn't anticipate it. We don't know what the hotel's going to do to the flow of this, and a lot of the other things that have been added into the mix. It's very hard to predict when you have all of these variables how that is. But the underlying fundamental thing here is just, again, goes back to that safety and being able to close that or make those hard closures. From my personal perspective, one of the biggest challenges that we've had with any events that we have downtown, regardless of which side of the street that they're on, is that town green. And we have that big public space with a lot of gathering, and we don't have a way to physically secure it. From any kind of vehicle leaving the roadway or anything like that. And that's always a challenge. And those water barriers have been what we've used in the past. And this would alleviate our need to do that because people would not be able to drive a car in that direction.
Well, I would leave you with, we're going to seek to enhance safety on Highway 9, but I don't want to have us let our guard down on Cricket and coming up Haynes Bridge and around. And even more so going around School Drive behind Teasley and the lofts and over, because those are open. And the people who know their way around are going to figure out a way to get around there, and there's still going to be a lot of people, and it's going to be a different environment. So
there'll be people trying to use the high school, Independences, all that for the parking. That always is the case. We usually have a pretty good job of controlling that out there. But with all of these additions and with the changes to the layout, it does present a lot of challenges.
Yeah. Thank you.
Councilman Binder.
Just wanted to make sure, I know you're gonna have a lot of signage around this whole center here, but maybe in the areas where people, around Alpharetta know where they can cut off to get home. So like Mayfield, Cumming, Wills, just maybe having signage like y'all normally do a week ahead of time saying, hey, you may want to use Wills Road this time.
Yeah,
or Mayfield.
This would be like we would think in terms of this, because this is such a change from what we've done in the past of taking an aggressive public relations blitz on this and sort of putting this out on social media well in advance, letting people know when it comes, and even asking for what their concerns might be in advance. But we have the beauty is we have a lot of good mobile signage that we can put up in advance to allow people to know that this is coming. Because it's going to be a big change. I mean, a lot of people who live here, they still only know one way to get to where they're going. So,
and even when we tell them 20 times, they'll still be surprised that it's in the middle of Highway 9. But I think, like signage, especially today, I was saying, hey, last turn before traffic jam.
Duly noted.
Cool.
Councilman Mitchell.
Thank you for thinking this through so thoroughly. Emergency plan, like ambulatory and fire and all that, will there be a plan to put those in place before the street is closed? Or
yes, sir. In terms of the emergency response for all of those things, we have like sort of a layered plan in terms of how we get in there. The beauty of this is that we have all of our fire teams, we have the bike teams that are always there, they're always roving around. We have stationary teams, and then we have a plan for getting people to the larger apparatus when we need to. And so we have those gators, we have things like that. We have the ability to just close roads down. We have the ability to quickly get a lot of resources and have officers move people out of the way if it comes to a situation where we would have to get a fire truck or whatever through. Let's hope that doesn't happen. But we always stage it in tiers, and so there'll be the larger equipment will be outside of the perimeter, standing by. Yes, sir.
Any other questions from council or any comments? Major, I'll just share. I did participate in the meeting y'all had a few months ago and talked about this. And while I know this can be disruptive, when our professionals tell us that this is what we need to do to protect our people, you know, when you see what's going on in the world and so many autos crashing through crowds and events and things like that, I just think we need to make a good faith effort to try to do this to protect our residents, to protect the people that come to our events, and also do it as well as we possibly can to make it as little inconvenience as possible. So I appreciate you bringing it forward.
Absolutely, thank you.
Hopefully we'll be ironing out the details and we'll be having some.
And I just wanted to say, I just really appreciate Morgan and Pete's help on this because they've been really working hard with us to try to come up with this new plan. They've been very flexible, and it's been a good time, actually. Good fun, trying to do better.
And it is no small feat that the Georgia Department of Transportation is willing to consider this.
Sir, it is not.
Because it shows a lot of respect for our community and Pete's work with them over the years and your professionalism. So thank you. Third and final workshop item will be the priorities for the Wills Park bond items. Director Rogers had to go all the way back there just to come back up here.
Good evening. I have a couple of slides that I want to show as we're talking about the start of the Wills Park. And while I was looking up, I would ask a trivia question. That's the word I was looking for, trivia question. Are y'all aware of how many entrances, vehicle entrances, there actually are to Wills Park? Thanks for trying. I mean, for playing. There are 11 entrances. 11. If you count.
Vehicular
entrances, yep. If you got to start over all the way on Roswell Street, remember, at the community center, you got to go all the way up to Wills, almost to Highway 9. And if you count all of those, it's 11. So I know everybody's going to do it. I did it 3 or 4 times just to make sure. Even after I drove it. So we're here tonight to talk about the Wills Park priorities moving into the bond referendum. We are, with Pete's help and Pete's staff, we are aggressively going after our bond referendum items from the bond, and we're excited about that.
Keep going.
So one of the ones that we want to get off the ground as quickly as we can is Wills Park and the things that we're going to be doing at Wills Park. And we're talking about Wills Park proper, not the equestrian center here tonight. So we're just talking about Wills Park, the athletic, if you will, the athletic side of the house on Wills Park. So we are in the packet. You got a list of priorities, but I wanted to kind of show them to you tonight, a visual form of those. So one of the first things that we're going to be going after is the gateway entrances. Those are at the corner of Wills and Old Milton and Roswell. Currently, you can ride by those places and not even know that there's a 120-acre downtown park there just waiting for you to enjoy. And so we're going to highlight those 2 entrances. And this is just to give you a diagram. This particular drawing that you're looking at right now was done by, is it not showing anywhere else other than what I'm looking at? Okay. All right. I was wondering why everybody was looking at me and not the screen. It's unusual. Give him a minute. I only had that one question, one time saver question while I was plugging in, so I'm kind of dead in the water right now. How many exits are there? How many what? How many exits are there? Got nothing. Okay. All right, well. I'll come up here. Okay, so we're talking about the two gateway entrances. That's one of the things that we've talked about. The master plan made that quite evident. That was something that we needed to do very quickly, so we'll be doing that. We had Steve Manley back in 2019 that did a conceptual drawing of what that gateway could look like, enhancing the Circle of Friends, Children's there, that great oak there, and some kind of gateway with an archway that announces Wills Park. And we want to have not the exact same one down at Wills and Old Rucker, but like a brother and a sister, if you will, of the same family, but you know that you've arrived at Wills Park, and do some signage at those other entrances to Wills Park so people will know where they're going. The next priority that we're going to be looking at is the connecting spine, which is going to connect those two gateway parks as well as the equestrian center with a common trail running through the park. That will be a little bit wider. It'll be like a 10 or 12-foot trail through the park that will really enhance the park, make the park much walkable, and we'll get some of those folks that are walking Old Milton off of Old Milton and walk through the park to get to downtown. The next thing is the Wacky World improvements. That's Wacky World was a community-built program, built program of wooden that was 23 years ago, and it has literally outlived its useful life. It is, we're spending a lot of money to keep that going, so what we want to do is to replace that community-built playground with another community-built playground. So we're going to be asking the community after as part of, you'll see as this, we're going to be doing the demolition of Wacky World, but then we're going to be inviting the community to come and build Wacky World back. And keeping a lot of those little slats that have people's names on them and those kind of things. We're going to have to figure out a way to incorporate the things that are personal to Wacky World into the new Wacky World. And then the next thing on the list is the Wacky World restroom. If you've been to Wacky World or that part of the park and you've used the restrooms, you know that they need to be improved. Currently, we have a restroom there that is servicing Wacky World, the Lions Club Pavilion, that half of the baseball program as well as our trail program, and both of the sides have 4 stalls in them. And it's just overused and it is not up to standard. And we have our plan is to bring in 10 stalls on the men's side, 10 stalls on the women's side, and 2 family restrooms into that same complex. And we're really excited about that because I think that's one of the things that we can really do to enhance people's experience when they come to our biggest park. And then the last thing is the Wacky World improvements. The Wacky World is the dog park right there, right behind the community center, next to the event line there in Wills Park. And it was built, when it was built, they literally just put up a fence and didn't worry about drainage, didn't worry about anything. And now every time we put the mulch in there, the first big rain, all the mulch goes down and is caught by the fence. How you can tell that we really have a problem is if you go out there and stand on the event lawn side of Wacky World and count the number of boards that are on the fence and look to the far one at Old Milton and count how many slats you can see. They're supposed to be the same, but when you count, you won't see the same number. So you'll know that's how much that has filled in down there. So the plan is, I was going to show you that, is that we have a plan that we did back in 2020. We went through the public input, got a lot of public input on the plan, and so we were going to increase the size of the dog park a little bit, increase the size of the all-dog park. We're going to put in some water features for the dogs, as well as get the drainage and the stormwater fixed. So those are our 5 big things that we're going to be starting, or that we're going to be putting out as an RFP. Just got a couple of dates for you. That RFP is going to go out this month, and then we're going to hopefully bring it back for awarding for the design in April. And we expect it to take 12 to 15 months to design it. With the exception of the Wacky World restroom and Wacky World, we're going to have that designed by August of this year, with the idea that we're going to be under construction in January of 2023 on those 2 particular projects, because we have those so far along already. I know that's a lot of information. I was hoping in a short amount of time, but I just want to let y'all know that was our priorities. Now, if we get through this and we have some money left in the bond on Wills Park, then our next objective would be to redo the disc golf course and enhance parking areas once we find out how much money those are going to take. So that's our plan. Be glad to answer any questions anybody may have.
Any questions or thoughts from council? Morgan, I'll just say I was out there at the dog park last week and it was awfully muddy, so I'll be excited.
Yeah,
You throw that ball 3 times and it's not pretty anymore.
it is not, it is not.
All right.
Thank you
Thanks,
very
sir. Appreciate your efforts. So that'll wrap up the workshop portion of tonight's meeting, and now is the opportunity for public comment. If any of you are here and wanted to make a comment, you have 3 minutes should you decide to use it. Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Any reports this evening? I'm not seeing any council members with reports this evening either. So I'm happy to tell you that it is time for us to adjourn. I must call for a motion to adjourn into executive session. We have a motion by Councilman Hypes, a second by Councilman Mitchell. All those in favor of adjourning into executive session, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote no. And it does pass unanimously. Thanks, ladies and gentlemen. Appreciate you showing up and look forward to seeing you again soon.